It's one of history's great paradoxes, the aircraft. Many pilots dismissed as a mediocre dogfighter became the very machine that turned the air war in Europe. The P-51 Mustang, sleek and fast on paper, was often mocked in its early days for being clumsy in a turning fight. Yet by the end of the war, it was the plane bomber crews prayed to see overhead, the escort that carried them home. How did such an unlikely underdog rise to dominate the skies? Was it superior technology, brilliant adaptation, or sheer luck of timing? Imagine if Allied commanders had given up on it, dismissing the Mustang as just another failed experiment. The war over Europe might have played out very differently. To understand why, we have to go back to the desperate years when the Allies faced a nightmare. Skies ruled by the Luftwaffe, and bombers falling in flames. By the early 1940s, the world's skies had become killing grounds. Europe burned under the relentless grip of Nazi Germany, and the Luftwaffe seemed untouchable. British Spitfires had saved their island in the Battle of Britain, but over-occupied Europe, the story was different. The Allies needed to strike at the heart of Germany's war machine, its factories, oil refineries, and rail networks. That meant sending massive formations of B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 Liberators on daylight bombing runs, but there was a deadly problem. Beyond the range of British-based fighters, these bombers became helpless targets. German Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs carved through their formations, leaving skies littered with burning wrecks. Losses were staggering, entire groups erased in single missions. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Without a way to protect the bombers, Allied air power risked collapse. And without air superiority, dreams of a cross-channel invasion of D-Day itself would remain impossible. Amid this crisis, a controversial aircraft emerged, the Mustang, but it was far from perfect. At first glance, the Mustang looked like a Marvel streamlined fuselage, long wings, and a modern profile that seemed destined for greatness. On paper, it was the fighter every pilot wanted, but once it entered combat, harsh truths surfaced. Equipped with the Allison V1710 engine, the P-51 performed adequately at low altitudes. But above 15,000 feet, the very realm where the war was being fought, it struggled badly. German fighters like the Bf-109 and FW-1090 thrived in high-altitude battles, turning the skies into their hunting ground. The Mustang, in contrast, gasped for air. Its sluggish climb rate and poor turning ability meant it could rarely match the Luftwaffe in a classic dogfight. Pilots who tried to out-earn German aces often paid with their lives. This wasn't the invincible war winner commanders hoped for. It was a question mark, an elegant but flawed experiment. And yet, despite these glaring weaknesses, the Allies didn't abandon it. Something was about to change. When the Mustang first entered service, the disappointment was immediate. The British Royal Air Force, desperate for fighters, received the early versions in 1942. Pilots quickly discovered its limitations. At high altitude, where bomber escorts were needed most, the Allison-powered Mustang was sluggish and underwhelming. It could chase down ground targets and perform reconnaissance admirably, but against Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, it was dangerously outclassed. Reports filtered back of missions gone wrong. Squadrons tasked with interception found themselves bleeding aircraft, unable to keep up once the Luftwaffe pounced. Bomber crews, who looked to their escorts for salvation, watched in horror as Mustangs were outmaneuvered, shot down, or forced to disengage. In some units, morale dipped. How could this be the fighter meant to turn the tide? The Allies already had proven aircraft. The Spitfire with its tight turns, the rugged Thunderbolt with its firepower. By comparison, the Mustang seemed like a misfit, an experiment destined for the scrapheap. But hidden beneath failure lay untapped potential, waiting for the right change to unlock it. Behind every statistic were men strapped into cockpits, gambling their lives on machines they didn't fully trust. For many Mustang pilots, the early war experience was defined by frustration. They spoke of climbing to intercept altitude only to find their engines wheezing, their aircraft struggling while German fighters circled like hawks. Some described the helplessness of watching comrades spiral earthward, unable to save them. Yet even in those bleak days, a handful of aviators sensed something different in the Mustang. They praised its smooth handling at low altitude, its speed in level flight, and the promise of its aerodynamic frame. To them, the plane wasn't a failure, it was a rough diamond. Held back by its heart, the Allison engine, its tension mirrored the human cost of war, doubt, loss, and fleeting hope. Each mission became a test not just of skill, but of faith that their flawed fighter could one day become more, that faith would soon collide with engineering genius. The breakthrough came not in the skies, but in workshops and boardrooms. British engineers proposed a daring solution. Replace the Mustang's underperforming Allison with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the same power plant that had saved Britain during the Battle of Britain. At first, it seemed almost too simple. Could swapping engines truly transform a struggling aircraft into a war winner? When test flights began, the answer stunned everyone. The Merlin-powered Mustang roared to life at high altitude, climbing with vigor and matching the best of German fighters. Suddenly, its aerodynamic frame made sense. What had once been wasted potential was now a perfect pairing of speed, range, and altitude performance. But it wasn't only about hardware. Pilots adapted to it. They stopped trying to turn with the Luftwaffe and began using boom-man-zoom tactics, diving from above, striking fast, and climbing away before the enemy could respond. The transformation was complete. The Mustang was no longer a liability. It was becoming a predator. With the Merlin engine humming in its nose, the Mustang finally revealed its true identity. Suddenly, it could climb with authority, dive at blistering speed, and fight on equal terms with the Luftwaffe's finest. But its greatest gift wasn't agility, was endurance. The P-51 could fly farther than any Allied fighter before it, escorting bombers all the way to Berlin and back. For the first time, B-17 and B-24 crews had guardians that didn't turn back halfway, leaving them alone to face swarms of German interceptors. This long reach changed the air war. Luftwaffe pilots, once confident in ambushing bombers, now found Mustangs waiting for them, fast, lethal, and relentless. The aircraft's sleek lines and powerful engine turned it into a spear, striking deep into enemy territory. By 1944, the Mustang had become a nightmare for the Luftwaffe. Daylight raids that once ended in massacre now punched through German defenses, with Mustangs slashing into enemy formations. Escort pilots recorded staggering kill counts, not just protecting bombers, but actively hunting down the very fighters that once dominated the skies. Stories spread quickly, Mustangs chasing down Me-19s over Berlin, diving after Focke-Wulfs with ruthless precision. In one mission, American aces even intercepted the feared Metz 262 jet, catching it vulnerable during takeoff and proving that speed alone wouldn't save Germany's dwindling air force. For bomber crews, the emotional shift was profound. Where once they scanned the horizon in dread, now they looked for the silver silhouettes of Mustangs and felt hope. Losses dropped, morale surged, and the Allies pressed deeper into the Reich. The Mustang was no longer the underdog.
Ow.
It was the hammer blow that shattered Germany's aerial shield, clearing the way for invasion. The Mustang's legacy stretched far beyond its victories in the skies. By escorting bombers deep into Germany, it broke the Luftwaffe's back, paving the way for D-Day and the eventual liberation of Europe. Historians often call it the plane that won the air war, but its legend is tangled in paradox. It was never the nimblest dogfighter, never the tightest turner, yet it achieved what others could not: complete dominance through endurance, power, and strategy. For the men who flew it, the Mustang became more than a machine. It was a lifeline. Bomber crews remembered scanning the skies and weeping with relief at the sight of Mustangs diving to their rescue. Fighter pilots spoke of its reliability, of how it gave them the edge to fight on equal footing. Its reputation as the savior of Europe endures, but the truth is more complex. The P-51 didn't conquer by perfection, triumphed by turning flaws into strengths, and in that lies its enduring myth. The story of the Mustang is a story of contradictions. It began life as a flawed, underpowered fighter, dismissed by some as a waste of resources. Yet with adaptation, patience, and a bold gamble on the Merlin engine, it became the war's most decisive aircraft. It wasn't the best at turning battles into elegant duels. It wasn't even designed to be the perfect dogfighter. What it did was far more important. It gave the Allies control of the skies when they needed it most. In the end, the P-51 proved that war isn't won by flawless machines, but by the right combination of people, tactics, and technology at the right moment in history. The Mustang was a tool, but in the hands of determined pilots and with the hopes of thousands of bomber crews behind it, it became a symbol of survival and of victory. Its silhouette is now etched into history, a reminder that perfection is not the key to dominance. Adaptation is. But here's the question. If the Allies had abandoned the Mustang early on, dismissing it as a failure, how different might the air war have been? Was the Mustang truly destined for greatness? Or was it simply the right aircraft at the right time?